Today is a big day for us. You want to know why? It's because this is the end of Natas. It's the very end. It's the end for us, and they may continue on levels, but we're not going to revisit it for a while because we got a lot more to learn in other areas of security. But I am here to say that I have good news and I have bad news. I'll give you the bad news first. So the bad news is that I was unable to recreate the solution on my machine. The good news is I have a general understanding of what we're going to do and how it's supposed to be done. And I think I know why I'm unable to recreate it on my machine, which I'll explain later. But either way, there are multiple solutions. Everybody solves it slightly differently. But at least we learned what kind of attack it is and how it could be leveraged in some of the vulnerabilities, and specifically PHP. So with that being said, Internet, to the last and final level on the Natas. You have no idea how excited I am to finish this. All right, so we get to Natas 33, and we're presented with some text. And the text here states that, can you get it right? Question mark. So we're going to upload something, and they basically want us to update our firmware with whatever upload we upload. So we're putting something in, and we're hopefully going to maliciously manipulate something to get something back, which is our password. Now, with this specific attack, or this specific challenge, they've actually structured this challenge and mimicked to represent a attack that was actually discussed, I think in 2018 or 2017, that was discussed at Black Hat. And there's a series of resources that all the other answers point to. So there's 3 answers that I found, and all 3 of those answers point to the same place. And that place is going to be this presentation here. So let me go to the back. Actually, let me just, probably faster if I just pull this up here. So you can see it's, okay, Black Hat 2018. And this is done by Sam Thomas, and he basically talks through a unserialization attack, leveraging a specific type of uploaded file. So this document is good. So this presentation is nice. It's nice and useful. He also wrote a white paper, which is basically a summation of this PowerPoint. And there's also a presentation here. So there's a presentation at Black Hat, but there's also another presentation he did at B-Sides. So there's 2 of the same presentations that he talks through. But interestingly enough, like, these were useful, and I got an idea of what was being discussed. But I thought the most useful recreation or explanation of what this type of attack was in a simplified way was actually this video from IPSec, who puts out content like crazy. Like, it does like a hack the box every 5 seconds. So I thought this was actually super useful because he explained the attack in a really simplified way. But in addition to that, I actually highly recommend this other video that he recommends inside of here. And in his description here, you can see he refers it here. So I recommend watching this as like a primer to understand deserialization attacks. And that is actually kind of like a prerequisite to understanding the advanced version of what we're doing here. Because this is a deserialization attack, but more advanced because we're using different types of files and metadata. So I definitely recommend watching this video, then this video, and I think you'll understand kind of what we're getting at when we're doing this attack here. So those are some useful resources that I highly recommend. So I'm going to close those out. This is a white paper. I'm going to close that out. We will leave the presentation open, and we will close that video. And here are the solutions. So these are the solutions that I came across. The beautiful UI one did a decent job at explaining it. They kind of walked you through what they were trying to achieve. They talked through, so you can see they're referring the talk from Sam Thomas here. And they do a pretty good job at explaining it. They do it through Burp, and I'll kind of walk you through their explanation of what they're trying to achieve. Everybody else does it a similar way. Here's another one where it basically kind of gives you a roundabout way of solving the problem. Interestingly enough, this individual found a shortcut. So they actually found the answer from the previous level. So in level 32, you could actually get level 34's answer based off of where you're located in the directory. I didn't do it that way. This is the right way. And they actually talk you through a lot of what was referred in the other one. This is an okay explanation. I'm not going to explain it there with them. This guy, or gal, did another good job at explaining it. They actually did it through a Python script as per usual, like they've done everything else. So they basically did everything that this individual did through Burp, but in a Python script. So I won't walk you through that, but I'll leave it open just in case. And there you go. Those are the solutions. That is the source of where this challenge was derived. And I'm really going to try to explain this. I can't promise you that it's going to be amazing, but we'll give it a shot. So, deserialization attack. So we've done something similar to this in a previous level. I think it was like 5 or 6 levels ago, where basically we were taking advantage of a few things. And the vulnerabilities that we're really going to take advantage of are one is magical methods, which we've talked about previously, which are methods that are baked into classes, especially when those classes are initiated as objects. So we have magical methods, and the specific one we're going to play around with and make vulnerable or use the vulnerable of it is destruct. That's magical methods. Another thing we're going to take advantage of is uploading files. So this is somewhat of a object injection attack as well, because we're going to create an object from the class, which takes advantage of this magical method. And so we'll just say that's an object injection. And then another thing we're going to take advantage of here are a specific type of object injection. So instead of uploading any type of file, we're actually going to upload a file called a FAR file, which stands for, the FAR is the PHP piece. It's kind of like an acronym or a backronym. And then the R is an archive. So this is basically archive. So this is PHP archive is what that stands for. Now, those are some of the things we're going to do here. And to draw you kind of like a pretty graph is, here we are. And this is like any other attack that we've done in the past. So my arm is falling off. Oh my gosh. So we're going to upload something here. And what we upload there are going to be 2 files. So first file we're going to upload is going to be our malicious PHP. So we can just call this m.php for malicious. And that's going to be basically catting out the password from the etc underscore Natas webpass slash Natas 34, something like that. It's the same location we've always gotten from all our passwords. So that's going to be our catting out that certain location. And then the other file we're going to upload is going to be a FAR file. So this can be our, let's call it p.far for now. I think it's actually called something else that we've used, but it's going to be a .far file. And now this FAR file is going to actually do some interesting things where the things that it does based off the metadata inside of it, it's going to actually get through the source code, because we're going to look at the source code in a second. And the source code has a few exceptions and a few conditionals that we need to pass. One of which is that we need to have a matching hash. So it's basically checking MD5 hashes and saying, okay, I need these 2 hashes to match. So MD5, MD5, these 2 need to be equal to each other. If they're not equal to each other, then we're going to basically say no good. That's one thing. Another thing we're going to actually check for here, in addition to the signature check, is the size. So the size of the file has to be valid. That's another thing. Another thing is that we have to reach a certain point in the source code to get to a pass-through function, I think. Or no, so we need to get the destruct to activate. So we basically need to have the destruct activated. And to have the destruct activated, that means that we need the class to create an object. And to do that, we need to leverage a few items inside of this FAR file to do all of that stuff. And once all of that's done, it's then going to actually come back to here, and it's going to execute our code, and that's going to get us back our password. So that's kind of like, at a high level, the flow chart of what's going to happen here. So next, let's dive into the source code. So I have the source code open here. First things first, we can ignore the HTML at the top. We can ignore most of the HTML down here. We'll jump to the bottom and kind of show you the bottom piece here, because as you know, I like to look at the bottom first and work my way up. So PHP code here. So first things first is we're always going to start our session. And it's going to be here, starting our session. Next thing is basically we're going to do a post of the file name. So that's what us posting our file there. So we're going to post that file name there. And also it's going to check to see if an array key exists for the uploaded file. And then it's going to actually do and if that's all that's true, then it's going to run our class. So here it's going to create a new object from the class executor. So if that's what we're going to do, let's scroll up here and look at the rest of the source code. Now, here we basically state that we have our class, which I referred to already. So this is our executor class we're going to create an object of. We have inside of this class, we have a few things. So we have a magical method of construct, and we have another magical method of destruct. Now, we know from previous challenges that these magical methods occur based off of certain things. And when creating an object within a class, no matter however that object is utilized, it eventually has to be destructed. And when that destruction happens, there's a process there where we're actually deserializing a serialized object. And when we go through that process of deserializing a serialized object, we're actually going to go through this pass-through function. And we know from previous challenges that the pass-through function is something that is vulnerable as well, and we can execute our code. And that this pass-through function is actually where our malicious PHP script is actually going to execute that cat, basically the reading out of the password that we need. So that's kind of how that functions there. You can see a few items here with the if conditions at the top. We're basically going to do the comparison between the MD5 hashes. And if I see here, you can see this is the text saying that you're wrong, and you can see the comparison here. So we're going to compare this file name to this file name, and if file names match, then you're going to get your kickback. So that's the deconstruct, and the construct is basically you uploading the file. It's going to check a few parameters, so it needs to make sure it's the right size that you've uploaded. And down here, it's going to check. Oh no, here it's basically going to move the file to a certain location. So it's going to move it to this location here, and it's going to print all that back out to you. So there's not too much code here. And that is really all I wanted to show you with the source code. So now I'll actually take you to the solution. And while I'm walking you through the solution, actually, I'll take you to a few resources that were useful for me. So first things first, I mentioned far file a few times. And actually another thing here is, let me go to the top of this. Sorry, internet. So here is an explanation that I appreciated, and this one was a good one as well. So these two articles basically talk through the PHP FAR deauthorization vulnerability. So they're basically all talking to the same thing. You can see they're talking about Sam Thomas. So a lot of people talked about this attack in 2018. It was something that a lot of people chatted about. And basically they talk through what it is at a high level. And interestingly enough, you can see down here that at this point in time when they wrote this article in 2019, there was still a series of vulnerable, really like popular things that were actually vulnerable to this, certain versions of like WordPress and Drupal. Like these are two like prominent things that are being leveraged by a lot of people. And I'm sure these are as well. I just haven't heard of them. So I thought that was quite cool. I mean, cool, but not cool at the same time. That we're actually doing a challenge that's somewhat relevant. And it's not super historical. So that's that. They talk through a lot of stuff here. Same thing applies here with this one. They have really neat, beautiful graphics. And the thing I wanted to mention here that they actually talk through, which is quite important, is talking about certain aspects of the attack. And let me go to my notes and see if I'm missing anything that I wanted to point out. So there's nothing in my notes that's too important to point out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remove these. And there's two things that we should mention here. So one is stream wrappers, and the other one is the FAR file itself. So as I mentioned, the FAR file basically stands for PHP archive. And specifically to make sure that this functions correctly is that it needs, in the beginning of the file format, it needs this piece here, which is the whole compiler. I don't remember specifically why that was the case. I think this is needed to have it actually execute into a FAR file itself. And maybe in here somewhere explained, but that is an important piece that is needed. And the stream wrapper specifically, this is similar to like an HTTP kind of wrapper here. So you know in the URL basically you have your HTTPS : // That's a very similar process that's happening here. So there's a series of stream wrappers built into PHP, and these stream wrappers are utilized for a series of things. One explanation that I came across that was kind of useful was basically stating that when there's data being written to or read out of a certain location between a source and a target, there needs to be some sort of data stream happening between those two. And that data stream sometimes has a wrapper associated to it, depending on what kind of process that's occurring there. So if you're sending files like FTP stuff, then you can see that there's an FTP stream wrapper here. If you're doing something along the HTTP lines, then you have an HTTP wrapper. So these wrappers are basically focusing on the type of process that's occurring between a source and a target when that data is being written to and read out of. Specifically, what we're going to look at is the FAR stream wrapper, which I'm assuming is when you're basically zipping or archiving some sort of file. And that's the thing that we're going to take advantage of today. And that was all I wanted to show there. If I close that. Cool. So now we can jump into the actual solution. So here we have two files. So one is the malicious file that I mentioned. So this is a very basic file that we've done in the past, where basically you can do a system call, you can do a shell exec, you can do, I think there's another one, I forgot what it's called, but there's like different methods that are built into PHP that you can run here. And this little method's basically gonna turn this string into a command, and then we're gonna actually echo that string back out to us, which is our answer. So we're basically gonna cat out this folder here in this location to get our password, and that will make us very happy. The next thing is the far file, and currently I have this labeled as test.far.php, but when you run this, you just want to make sure that it's test.far. So there should be no .php, it's just test.far. And when we're going to run this through, there's a few things that we should point out here. So we have our class executor, which we already know that exists. And then specifically inside of this class executor, we're going to add a few items. So the first thing we're going to add is our shell PHP, which is our malicious PHP that cats the password out. Our signature here is going to be set to true. So it could be one of two things. So it could be set to true, where it's always true, or instead of setting it to true, I have a command line here to basically say, if we're not going to set this to true, then we need to set this signature to the MD5 hash of this malicious file. And to do that, you can basically do, within Linux, you can do MD5 sum, and that's basically going to turn that shell PHP into a hash here. So we can just have it as true as we have here, or we can have it as that string there. And depending on your preference, we can just do it as a string to match that up. And then we have our init as false. So this is basically saying that we want you to initialize something, and we're going to say no. So the next thing is a few items. So the first two items I'll point out that are kind of obscure but needed for this specific far file. The first is that there needs to be some sort of text in here for the add from string. I don't remember the specifics. I think if you watch the presentation from Sam, he's going to say that it's just needed. There might be a specific response, but I don't remember him actually explaining the rationale behind this. And then there's another one here, which I think I remember correctly. This is needed for the far file to actually be executed. So this is kind of like a pre-step before everything else occurs. It's kind of like it's like a bootloader for a computer. So it basically is stating that it wants to set the stub, and the stub is like the first piece of metadata inside of the far file. So this needs to occur. A few other things here we're going to point out is that our far is referring to itself. So we're basically creating a new test far from the file here. And it's going to basically do some initialization steps. Here we're going to create a new object. So our object's going to be basically an O, and that we're going to create that from our class. And we got some metadata. That's going to be our object. So we're putting our metadata to set the metadata correctly to that. And then we're going to stop buffering. So those are a few of the steps in the far file. Now, the reason I think that I was unable to have this execute correctly on my machine is that I think you need PHP inside of you need PHP setup basically inside of your computer to switch off a specific configuration setup inside of the PHP file itself to then create the far file. And what I'll do actually is I'll show you. Let me show you specifically here what I'm referring to, because inside of this video he talks to it here. Here we go. So, oh no. Okay, here we go. So here you can see that basically in this video that I recommended you watch, inside of the PHP configuration file, there's a specific piece in here that you actually need to adjust. So this far read only is traditionally set as on. We actually want to change that to off. And then once you've done that, then you can actually run your far file to set up the far file to where it's actually an executable far file. And I didn't do that, so I think that's kind of where I got messed up. But we're going to walk through the steps anyways. So we have our far file. We have our executable PHP script. So next we're actually going to run this to the website. So I have the website here. I'm going to upload. Specifically, I'm going to have a few files on here because I was screwing around with some stuff. So the first thing we're going to upload here is our malicious PHP script. So we got our shell PHP here we're going to upload. And before we upload it, actually, I want to catch it. So in Zap, traditionally, it defaults to not catching it every single time, so intercept on. And what that basically means is that if I'm here, right, and I'm sending a file to the website, the proxy that sits in between me, which is Zap, is going to actually, and here's the server we're sending it to, the Zap file usually lets it run through by default without actually intercepting every single thing that you post. But we want to switch that on, so we're actually going to toggle this on here. So when we send it, it stops it from going forward. We can edit it before it actually gets to the server. And the reason we want to do that is because we want to change the name that we're sending the file for. And reason being is actually, let me show you what it looks like without doing it, and then I'll do it with it. So we're going to upload that file, and we can see we have our post request here. And that post request is specifically going to change the name to our cookie. So this is our PHP session cookie, and you can see that that's the file name it's given it. And if I pull this back down further, you can see our PHP session cookies here. But instead of doing that, we actually want to catch it in midair, and we want to change it to the file name we're sending it so it has a .php inside of it. So we're going to browse this again. We're going to upload, and you can see that it's broke here, and we're going to change this to shell.php. And then once we've done that, then we're going to allow it to run through. So now we've posted the request, and here, if we go back in here, you can see that now the file name is .php, and we need it to be .php, so it's actually an executable PHP script. So we've ran that up there. So we have our one piece up there. So we basically uploaded our first file, because remember we have two files we need to upload. So we have our first file up there. That's our malicious script, and it's our m.php malicious. And then we have to upload our far file. That's not a two. Far file, right? And to do that, we're basically going to do the same thing. So we're going to catch everything we send. We're going to come in here, we're going to upload it again, and we're going to do test.far, and we're going to do upload. It's going to catch that, and you can see it's done the session cookie again, but instead of that, we're actually going to do test.far, and then we're going to run that through. And if we come here, we can see that our specific post request has test.far, and it has all of our, basically, our information in here. And now the very last thing we want to do is actually we want to resend this test.far, but instead of sending it like a specific file, just test.far, we want to send it with our stream wrapper. Remember how I talked about the stream wrappers? We want to have our far, and then we want to have our // and then we're going to have test.far here, and then we're going to basically include our test.text at the end. And reason being is that I think I've seen this twice. One person stated that the test.text is needed just so the far executes, even if the file is not there. But I've also seen people do it without the test.text. So I'm not really sure if it's needed or not. We're going to do it anyways, just so you know what it looks like. So if I go into one of these answers, let's grab their specific, here we go. So here you can see that basically they have the far and then the : and the text.txt. So we're going to copy that, and then we're going to resend this, but we're going to resend it with our specific text. And the reason we're doing this is actually when you put in that stream wrapper, it's then going to execute this far file, which is going to basically break into everything that I previously explained, and it's going to run through the whole process of executing our eventual PHP malicious script. So we do send, and we get no response back because I told you that I think I effed this up. But if you do it correctly, we'll come down to this answer and say, hey, look, here's the answer. Congratulations. I'm just going to show you what it looks like if you did it in burp. And then you basically get your answer popping out below at the very bottom of the HTML in a break segment here, and that's your answer there. And then once you've gotten your answer, Internet, you come here, you put it into TOS34, and then boom, congratulations. You've reached the end for now. And for us, it could be forever. Just kidding. But I'm so happy to be done. Internet, I'll see you on the next video, which most likely won't be a CTF. So, see you around.